This episode of Talking Success is proudly sponsored by Pair Network, a platform that transforms professional networks into valuable assets. Through Pair, companies can access a wider range of qualified individuals, speed up time to hire, and reduce cost to hire significantly. The support for today's discussion underscores the commitment to advancing the future of talent acquisition. Enjoy the conversation.
I think where most businesses need to be very smart is that they are not only attracting a certain talent into the organization, because that completely is counterintuitive to creating a space of diversity and having a team play together. You'll end up having all the same people, and all of them are going to be fly offs, or all of them are going to be of a similar type.
Completely agree. You're not going to get the diversity. You're not going to get
Okay,
diversity of
so
thought.
you don't. You don't. So you need to know who your people in the organization that is really good at spotting certain talents. Is this the person that's really good at spotting analysts or analytical thinking? This is a person that's really good at knowing whether somebody's going to be a great engineer.
Certainly post-COVID, where you're not geographically
Yes.
bound now. You've got, I don't know about sort of remote working policies within TymeBank, but if you look at other organisations who are now saying, actually, as long as you're kind of in the same time zone, it doesn't really make a difference. So you've opened up this talent pool to literally millions of people to be able to go and scout effectively across all those markets. It's not realistic, is it?
No. So that's what I'm saying. You want to build a bench while you're building your team. And sorry for all the
No,
sports
no, no, no.
analogies. It's just you can clearly see where my foundations are at or coming from. So it's you have to be able, and I think I want to bring it back to when you've got kids, or when you've got a children's party, right? And you see a whole bunch of kids running around the grass. You can clearly see who's the one that's got ball sense. How do you know that? How did you intuitively know that kid's got ball sense? Now, the crazy thing is, if you're in a sport environment,
Yeah.
you can spot that. Very often, a parent, even who's with that child every day, don't see it if they don't have a level of ball sense or sporty background. So you would have to tell that parent, listen, that this one's got skills. And they might be, really? You think so? And it's true for work environments too. So the sad thing for me, though, and you're asking me about characteristics and traits, the sad thing for me is that very often you've got a talent, and I'm specifically speaking about a person that's got a talent that never make it to be in the top teams ever. Yet, you can have a person that only starts playing when they're 18 and they become a
Sure.
medalist, or take a Springbok player, which tells me that even if you've got a talent, if you're not nurturing it, coaching it, mentoring, growing, creating an environment where they are being challenged, where they are pushing the boundaries, where their boundaries get pushed, you basically create an environment of mediocrity. So it's true for kids, where if you don't push them a little bit, I'm not like don't push them too hard, but if you don't challenge
Encourage.
them and create a space where they are realizing that, oh, I'm not that good at this, even though I'm super talented, right? But I'm not this good at the specific skill or the specific conversation, or I may be not that nice to my team members. If you don't challenge them on those things, you end up very much encouraging an environment of mediocrity where it's just average. They don't excel because they just stay at that level. And they always default back to the thing that got them in there in the first place.
And
So, environments for me are incredibly
you talk about
important.
environments, and I think it's prudent to mention this without mentioning any names, because we don't need to do that. But I think there is also quite a lot of bias, whether it be conscious or unconscious, when it comes to looking at talent. And
Absolutely.
I'm not talking about sort of demographics or anything like that. I'm talking specifically around what you
No,
were
no,
just
no.
talking about, the environments that people have come from. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it in
Yes.
my career where, actually, I heard it this morning just before this call, where someone said, listen, I don't want someone from this, or this company because they won't fit. And you're saying, well,
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
I can understand because you understand the corporate sort of structure of that business, and I get that. But tarnishing every single
Yes.
employee of
Yeah.
one of these companies has like 7,000, 8,000 people, tarnishing 7,000 or 8,000 people with that same brush to
Yes.
say just because you've worked there for 2, 3, 5 years means that you're not going to be able to transition into my environment or into a different environment, I don't think is right.
100%. But it goes both
Yeah,
ways, right? So this is what I mentioned earlier about having a type. It really is a bias. So you are biased towards your previous successes, or the things that where also often where the comfort's coming from, right? So if the person has these and these traits, I feel more comfortable. So, and there is nothing wrong with that. It's actually, to a certain extent, I prefer that, but then you also need to know that that is your type or
sure.
your bias. And I need to complement that with talent identified by other people, and you need to equally respect that. So it's, for me, where respect comes from. This is now the environment that I'm talking about. You have to be able to create an environment for talent to thrive, for them to emerge, essentially. You need to create that space of trust. And it's for the person, but it's also for the people who are creating this talent pool. So there has to be this ecosystem of trust. And this is incredibly important. Now, for somebody like me who's had tough times in my career, trust is not always easy, but I've learned to not necessarily attach my trust to a person, but to their intent on whether we are on the same path. So I need to start trusting the intent of the people that are walking towards the same vision as I am, and that we will be doing the best thing for this organization. And at the same time, that creates a space of psychological safety. Now, I'm going to touch on this probably a little bit later, but that psychological safety is probably one of the key ingredients in the secret sauce, because psychological safety is something that is completely underrated. If it's absent, right, you've got a very toxic environment.
I think we can talk about this now, actually, Erin, if you don't mind. I just preface that with kind of an observation: is that we spend the vast majority of our waking hours at work. So,
Yes.
to a hiring manager, someone in that sort of capacity, where this person is going to be working closely within that team, it's sometimes very difficult to say, actually, I don't think this person's going to fit within the culture. Yes, they tick all the boxes, and if I'm going to remove all my unconscious bias, yes, they're a good fit.
Yes.
But you know what? I've got to work with this person for 8 or 9 hours a day, every day. Do, do I want that? And I've had this debate many, many, many times, and we've tried, blind interviewing where you take off everything. You don't even give the hiring manager a CV. You say just interview this person based on metrics of the job or scorecards, and
Yes.
inevitably
Yes. Yes.
it always comes down to, yeah, but I just don't think I can work with this person, or I don't think this person's going to fit within the team. What's the solution there then?
You're experiencing pain. That's your problem, right?
Mm,
You're in a state of pain. Your natural instinct is to remove whatever's causing that pain. Now, all you're trying to do is you're trying to prove that the feeling you're having is correct by performance reviews, all those kind of things. And that's sometimes what I'm asking guys is, why are you saying that? Why are you experiencing that pain? Because if you think about pain either coming from illness or healing, so if you think about when you train, that pain that you're experiencing is actually your growth. It's my growth. I'm getting stronger. You sometimes need people in your team that challenge you. The thing is, are
yeah.
you mature enough to be able to recognize that pain as your own growth? Or are you seeing this and you need to it, and I'll be a little bit, I suppose, more ruthless in my statement in a second, but you need to understand whether the pain is to the organization because it's toxic and it's cancerous and it's destroying the culture. And by not acting on it, I'm actually destroying my team. Okay. And then it really comes down to it's for the benefit of the team. Whether this is a pain that you're experiencing because your own growth is uncomfortable. And I'm asking that, and I often say to the guys, please don't answer me. I really honestly do not want to know. Don't answer me, but go home tonight and really think about whether this is your growth or the business's growth that this pain is created. Because I can't just have little whole bunch of cookie cutter people sitting in your team, because if we have that, it means that there's going to be no boundaries pushed, nobody challenging each other, no innovation, no creativity, because there is that element of challenging each other in a healthy way. And that's kind of the psychological safety that I'm talking about. If that's not present, if this person's attitude is destroying the psychological safety that you're trying to create, that isn't great. It isn't great for the business because it's distracting, it's taking everybody's focus off, and you really can't get the job done. Okay, and that is something else. I'm not even
No,
talking
and listen,
about
I think
that.
once someone's
Yeah.
in an organization, I absolutely agree.
Yes.
You can have that sort of conversation, that coaching, and getting people thinking like that. But before someone has got into the organization, when we're talking about selection and we're talking about hiring, interviewing,
Yes.
it's not humanly possible for Erin, you and in your team to sit in on every single interview with every single hiring manager and go, oh yes, but
No.
are you thinking about the big thing? Because I think it's human nature
Yes.
to want to work with like-minded people. So is that just something that you have to accept as a business, or are there sort of mechanisms and controls that a corporation would put in to ensure that doesn't happen? Because if there are, I haven't seen them.
There is long term talent and short term talent. There's people that are being brought into the business for a reason or a season. So if you think about it, and that's something that, sure, you can be looking, and it really comes down to being honest during your recruitment process. When you're trying to build a team for a reason, let's say for 4 years, 5 years, for a very specific purpose, something that you want to be doing, that's long term focused. It's what Simon calls the infinite game. It's the kind of people that you want to bring in where they give
Yeah, they're
more
like,
than they get, where they are long term focused, where they are committed to the cause, where it's not about the money, it's about the people they get to work with. And there's some very clear indicators of that present when you are spending time with a person. It's also because the characteristics typically associated with somebody that plays the long game is curiosity. I mean, I'm just going to name them as they come to mind, but somebody that's curious about everything. It's got a learning nature, that's adaptable, agile, that can have healthy conflict and not be threatened by the process that the conflict brings. People that aren't necessarily acting out of a space of
yeah,
defensiveness. So that's a level of maturity that you can recognize in a person. Do they have the skill set? No. Or not necessarily. Sorry, I can't say no. Not necessarily. Or do they have the skill? Are they the best fly half in the country? Maybe not. Maybe there's 10 others that are better, than more accurate than they are. But I'm choosing this person for the role they play in the team, not just the role they play in the game. Then you've got people that you bring in for the season. You've got a skills gap. There's certain work that needs to be done. It's a short term win, easy, fast, quick. It's a little bit more reactive. That very much is somebody that's coming in for the season to do a
sure.
certain job. You cannot, and that person very easily could become the person that play the infinite game. You just don't know it maybe in the beginning. They maybe evolve into that role. But ultimately, you don't always know these things right up front. You brought them in to play a role for a time,
Mhm.
and that is okay. Adriana, I mean, many people say that, but she very much concentrates on the fact that You hire slow, fire fast. I mean, you would have heard it before. People say
Which
it all
is
the
easier
time.
said than done in South Africa.
It's easier said than done in South Africa. However, it starts with an honest conversation with the person. It doesn't start with a progressive disciplinary process. Now, very often, in the absence of being able to have that conversation, people default to the system, which is the disciplinary process. That has to be there anyway. I mean, shame on you if none of those things are in place, but you shouldn't be using this as being a good human being, is sitting down with a person and saying, I'm not satisfied. I'm not happy. This is not what we agreed. But people sort of justify that for a while, and they try and give reasons to themselves and to others. Some often it's because they brought the person in, so they don't want to look like they're the
They're at
person
fault.
that's
Yeah.
now brought in, so they end up defending almost their decision in the first place, right? I've had so many conversations with people in my career that where we hug at the end of the session, where the person thanks me for just being honest with. They felt something. They felt something was wrong. They've been struggling. They've actually just been waiting for somebody to say something about it. Now, that is the level of psychological safety that you want to create, where you can have this conversation. I've had equal amounts of people. It's very much 50-50 in my world, where I've told the person, if we continue down this road, you're going to be faced with two paths that you need to choose. It's not going to be my choice, it's your choice. In the absence of you choosing, you're leaving me with no choice. So I want you, like I said in the beginning, people want choice, convenience, and a great experience. They want to be respected. They want to be treated like mature adult human beings. If you end up having that honest conversation in the absence of you making the choice, you leaving me no choice, and I have to actually make the decision for you, which is equally uncomfortable for both of
Absolutely.
us. And we're starting that journey. Then I have people ending up in that, and I'm not talking here about gross
Sure.
misconduct or people, it's not that. I'm more talking here about what you're referring to as a person that just over time doesn't seem like they fit. And I'm using the fit because I often ask people,
Into
fit
what?
into
Yeah.
what? Fit into your height, fit into the box. I don't know. Because you're looking for people that don't fit. Literally, when I get the job spec, often it's people that don't fit the normal structure. In rare cases, they
The
want
conforms to
somebody that
everything.
fits
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
but then when they get in, it's like, no, they don't fit. So, right? It's funny how that ends up playing around. But I'm talking about people where over a period of time, and sometimes that time's 3 weeks, sometimes that time period's 3 years, where the growth has not been consistent with the organization. They've either outgrown the organization because they started being interested in other things. They might have had kids, they might have
yeah.
done studies, they might want, or the business outgrows them. Now, in that situation, that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that we need to have that honest conversation. We need to call it what it is. We give the person the opportunity to choose. If they can't adapt, adjust, get up the curve, make up for lost time, whatever it is. And I've seen people really turn it around, as in truly, honestly, wind out of my sails. I am super stoked. I'm so happy that we've managed to get to this. And they become, very often, they become the ambassadors of the organization.
Yeah, 100%. I've always struggled with one accolade that businesses give, and actually, I think it even happens at school. Is most improved.
Yes.
What does that mean? It's like you were pretty rubbish, and actually now
Most
you're all
improved.
right. All right, and now you're pretty good. I just don't
Most
like that as an
improved.
accolade.
Sure, that is an interesting one. That we've got really, really strong talent. Most improved can really only be in a place where the company has actually invested in a level of the organization, whether that's learnerships, graduates, and I mean, still improved is
Yeah,
it's
it
so
is.
insulting. But I mean, I suppose that's also isn't that really the culture that we've created? If you think about schools, and if you think about the generations that we are now working with, but also exposed to, where they don't have to necessarily, it doesn't have to be that
Not
hard,
at all.
is often the conversation I get faced with. And I often say to guys, I wish you a really hard few months, because how on earth do you want to get the resilience and the grit needed to be facing the tough times that we'll most likely encounter without really having incredibly difficult times or difficult seasons that you have to go through? You need to experience some losses, and I'm not talking about personal, but you need to really make mistakes.